Anybody hold it? Okay.
And I may be asking the wrong people, I don't know, but the last 3 years I've had 3 exchange students, and they say our education system is a joke. That it's so easy, that they've had all that stuff 3 and 4 years ago. They're just here mainly for fun, you know, because it's the classes are nothing. Have we lowered our standards to meet other people's standards, or the alien standards, or whatever?
Who is the question directed to?
Anybody that can answer it.
I want some good answers. Because I have 3 different countries, France, Switzerland, and Turkey. And they say it's so easy here.
I don't think we have lowered our standards. I think there's been a move in Texas recently to try to increase the rigor of some of the course offerings. Now, I will tell you that there are some classes in some school districts where they are not as hard classes as they need to be.
Well, what can you do about it?
Well, what I think you have to do from what we've attempted to do on the state board is you set a curriculum. For instance, the 4x4 is in place, 4 years of science, 4 years of math. You have to make sure that the course offerings that fulfill those 4x4 are rigorous courses so that somebody cannot take a fluff course. I think the other thing you need to do, and I've encouraged this for some time, is not to have a senior free period. Okay? I don't think that's good. And you do have districts that you have a free period your senior year. Well, if you stop and think about it, when do you need to make sure that you're being prepped for college? You need it in your senior year. So I'm hopeful that we can move in that direction, that we don't continue to have the free senior period, and therefore you have a course that you're really taking that makes a difference when you go to college or when you go out in the workforce. So I think those are 2 ways that you can do it. I do think the accountability and assessment, and there was a recent article last week that just came out that showed Texas was basically 6th among all the states in that area. However, Texas is 48th in the country in the amount of money spent per pupil. And it's true the state's put more money into education, but when you have 70 to 80,000 students going into the system, the price per pupil, the national average is over 10,000. In the state of Texas, it's about 7 something. That concerns me because I firmly believe this: the best investment you make is in education, and not just kindergarten, but pre-K and on up the system. If you don't invest it now, it's going to come back and get you at a later date at a much higher cost.
And let me tell you, mine's an opinion, and from what I've seen, you have to have standards set, and the State Board of Education does have to take some accountability for that. Because whether you call it the TEKS or you call it some other system, which I know there's a lot of dissension about whether the TEKS is the proper way to determine education. But you have to have a system that you oversee, that you make sure that what you put in the teacher's hands is going to do the best job that you can possibly do to give them the opportunity to teach the proper things that young people need to learn. And I think where you're coming from, what I heard a lot on the board, when I was on the board from teachers, was we're having to teach to the TEKS. Well, if you're teaching to the TEKS, and the TEKS contains the right data and the right information and the right educational tools, that's not bad. What they were really saying was, I'm having to teach to a system that does not adequately educate our kids. And so the national, I mean, let's just look at why we have the test we have today. Because basketball players got on TV and say, I graduated from UCLA and I can't read. And you know, somebody's going to take offense to that, and rightfully so, and try to put in a system that makes sure that doesn't happen, because it's a bad smear on everybody. So I think we have to come up with a system that makes sure, and I think, personally, we are teaching the wrong thing. We need to get back to some of the things that we were doing in the past, because they were working. You know, phonics is a good teacher of a lot of different things, how to talk, how to spell, so there's things that we need to go back and get. Now, maybe we need to do them a different way, because our young people today are so advanced. I mean, it's hard for a teacher to stand in front of a blackboard and write something out when a young person's been at home doing this on the TV all day. We have to find a different way to teach it, but until we get the basic materials, I think you're gonna hear things like that. I think until we change our teaching methods, and until we make sure that we have adequate systems and programs and tools out there to put in the hands of our teachers, you're gonna keep hearing things like that. And I think that's part of the responsibility of the state board needs to make sure that they're taking on those responsibilities.
There's 3 countries.
Yeah.
3 different people said
Oh,
the
I
same
know.
thing.
I know.
It was really a joke. They came over just to meet the people because the education is lousy.
You were saying we have to have standards, but do you want the national standards that they're talking about? Because Rick Perry has turned down this Rise to the Top because it has that in it, that it has to be a national standard that they have to go by.
Yeah, I don't think you have to have national standards. In fact, I don't know how you have national standards. I think Rick Perry was properly did that because I think we don't want to give control of our educational system in Texas to the feds. I really don't believe that's where we need to put it.
Right.
So I think we have to have standards so that we make sure that across the state of Texas and in individual school districts, there's a minimum you have to do, you know, and because they do need help. They do look for us for help about what's the level I need to get to in social studies? What's the level I need to get to in math? The steps of getting a child, you know, graduated. The only way you're going to have a graduation certificate in the state of Texas mean anything is if you and Lubbock feel like your young people are graduating with the same level of education as somebody in Amarillo. I mean, because you don't want to hear, they're better educating their kids in Amarillo. So you know everybody across the state has a minimum level. And then, of course, kids learn at a different level, too. I agree with Rick Perry and what he did, because I sure don't agree in federal control of our education.
What you're talking about is the race to the top. At the last meeting, we passed our state board a resolution supporting the concept of not taking the money from the feds. So that's already been passed by the state board. I do not like the idea that the federal government would come in and set your curriculum. The problem, and of course, former Governor President Bush took No Child Left Behind. That was really the accountability system in Texas that he took to Washington. The problem that you have with what's proposed by the Obama administration is they have they say here, adopt this standard, but you know what? They haven't created the standard. So what they're asking you to do is buy something blind, and that's not a good concept. So we rejected that, and we oppose the implementation upon the state of Texas for the federal government to do that. So we adopted a resolution and rejected that.